Thank you, dear colleagues. I warmly welcome you this morning. It's really good that I could also come to the ASCEL, so thank you, Josipa, for inviting me. I will talk about assisted reproductive technology, but putting more focus on surrogacy, because it is one of the most controversial ones, and also it is my main research topic. I would like to delve into the identity questions which are arising from surrogacy procedures, because it's a, let's say, not that much developed area of research, because there are many philosophical questions and practical issues. It has been more developed in the cases of donor oocytes and sperms, or sperm donation and IVF, but not surrogacy, because there is this extra element of the actual career of the child. So what is the connection? As we know, and we have mentioned surrogacy before, but it has to be highlighted that it's radically changed the shape of how we interpret family life, children, connections, relationships, and even if we have to include not only medical infertility, for which surrogacy actually was to be a solution for, but social infertility, meaning that certain groups of people, out of not medical but other reasons, are refrained from or have barriers to have a child on their own, not necessarily their biological child, but also adoption. These are the single people, and also homosexual couples, for example. So assisted reproductive technology, IVF, donor conception, the preservation, freezing of gametes, and also surrogacy have drastically changed the shape of how we interpret family. And I see that it is the technological and medical development does not go hand in hand with, let's say, the moral, social, or even the legal development if we look at the global scale. But these developments are here. They can be utilized, but it is on us, on us and the legal systems and our bioethical viewpoints of certain regions, how we would like to interpret these challenges, whether we accept it or not, or let's say stay silent on the issue, or just provide some policy solutions, because undeniably it is here, the change is here. Yes. If we look at the assisted reproductive techniques, we can see that first and foremost, it follows the reproductive wishes and desires of adults. Okay, as long as the baby is not born, yes, of course, we follow or try to follow what the actual adults involved in this whole procedure would like to have. But once the child is born, the focus has to be shifted, I think, even before the child is born, but this is another issue. And we now have come so far in child protection and the children's rights from the beginning of the 20th century that we have many legal tools to rely on how to navigate these issues. And if we talk about assisted reproductive techniques, children's rights framework and the human rights framework is really important to give us certain moral guidelines, how to facilitate the life and the development of those children who were born not on in a conventional manner, let's say. We have to recognize that children are independent right holders. They are not subject. They are a subject of protection, not an object anymore. They are their own They can be their own contributors to their rights, but it relies on the adult society how they can facilitate these issues. So I have listed one of the key rights which I have dwelled into during my research. I was really interested in the right to identity, because it does not only mean that, okay, you have an ID, you have a birth certificate, the information is listed, but it also has broad elements, sociological, psychological, and moral elements, and not only legal parentage, not only the legal forms of identity. Nationality is also one of the big issues, but it's not so meta, let's say, in comparison to identity issues. The family environment is also very important, and it is now, the identity is interpreted so broadly that the family environment and getting to know the family environment can be also affected by how we recognize the child's identity. Also, another very interesting and controversial topic in regards to surrogacy, the I couldn't say it better, the right not to be sold, not to be trafficked for the child, whether commercial surrogacy makes children kind of a commodity, and where is the balance between it, or there should be a line given or not. These questions are more detailed in my thesis, but now I would like to focus more on the identity dimensions because it's very interesting. So as you can see, there is a legal framework for what identity is. In international law defined in Articles 7 and 8, it includes identity, name, family relations that shall be recognized and without unlawful interference, and it has to be made transparent for the child. Also, Article 7 makes more emphasizes on right to have a name, acquire a nationality, and be cared for by his or her parents. But we can see that both of these articles are very broad on defining what identity is. For example, it does not say in Article 7 in the first point biological parents or adoptive parents, or what we are actually interpreting under that. So this gives us a broad concept of how identity legally can be interpreted. Okay, for sure, you have to be recognized somehow. You have to have official papers and formal recognition of your parenthood, but the protection goes beyond that in accordance with the policies of the CRC and itself. Yes, okay, so we have to protect the children's identity, but how actually we can facilitate to make them get access to this information, because it's sometimes not so, especially in assisted reproductive tech, not so evident that, okay, I have a database and I can look up who was actually my carrier and stuff. No, these things are not that much listed, that not much transparent. There can be a bit more transparency if we talk about donor gametes, for example, but in surrogacy, definitely not. So identity in surrogacy. You can see that in surrogacy there can be many variations how it actually happens. It can happen that the intended parents both contribute to creating the IVF embryo with their biological gametes, or there can be a donor gamete involved, and also it can happen that actually the intended parents adopt an already created embryo, so embryo donation, where they actually do not have any biological contact and connection to the child. And it can also happen that even the surrogate mother is related by blood to the child. However, on the official documents, usually where surrogacy is allowed, they do not even list the names of the surrogate or the intended parents, only after the surrogacy has been recognized. So in the meantime, when we get the official recognition of parenthood, only the intended parents will be listed and not the surrogate mother who actually contributed to the existence of the child. We cannot even talk about the donor conception and donor gametes because it can be completely lost. So we can see that the child can only preserve only fragments of certain fragments of their identity, and maybe never can actually transparently know that from which cultural and regional environment they came from. So this is the identity vacuum, which experts has recognized in surrogacy cases, that even if they know about the fact of surrogacy, that they were born from surrogacy, then there is no or very rare possibility for them to trace back the origins, neither to get in contact with the surrogate mother or the clinic themselves. I will like to invite you to common thinking. So maybe you know Mentimeter. If you have your phone in your hands, I would like you to recognize the QR code, and you will see that we will create, let's say, a map of words about how we interpret identity and what it actually means for us. I can see that, and I will also put on the Mentimeter.
Only one word.
You can do more if you want to, yeah. Yeah, and I will also put it on the screen. And we can see that it is a really broad concept. Did you manage to? Yes, I can see that you managed. Now I will look at it. Okay. And we will see each other's ideas. Okay. Oh, heritage, it sounds very good. It's also a broad term, but it encompasses all the stories we hear from our parents and stuff, but also the biological heritage, for example, what kind of diseases we may have because of based on our family medical history. Individuality, you see, that is really good. That is really which I wanted to capture, because the identity actually is very much collided in how we view ourselves, how we establish identity, sense of self, capacity. That's also good. That's also very good. I would like also to add maybe self-confidence a bit, because if you know all the pieces of what actually puts you together, what are your personality traits, it is based on your identity, you can be self-confident. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your contribution. So we can see that it's a bit, it's very much connected to the sense of self, and identity is such a deeply inside issue that if it is not all right, maybe it can cause problems, and not even maybe, but it can cause problems. Okay, so I will go back to my presentation. All right. Yeah, so the identity vacuum has psychological impacts. There are very rare, let's say, complete studies on the issue, but we can see that it also has been proved that early childhood development is really essential for the long run in a person's life. And we have to see that well-being of the child does not only mean physical well-being, but also psychological, moral, emotional, and psychological well-being. So there are the four aspects of it. And if something is not that much ensured, that it can have long-term consequences. For this, I would also like you to turn your attention to, maybe you know about this NGO, the Child Identity Protection. They especially deal with these issues, how children, or even in early adult life, people can or cannot actually trace back their origins, because it is an inherent desire in ourselves that we want to know where we come from, even though when this information cannot be, or it hardly can be disclosed to us. So we will listen to a video which very much encaptures that what actually identity protection can mean in the long run. And hope I will hear.
I was abandoned when I was born. Maybe my mummy and daddy couldn't keep me, or maybe they thought there was something wrong with me. Either way, I will never know how, or where, or when exactly I came into this world. I have so many questions I'd like to ask my parents. Do they think of me all the time, like I think of them? Do I have brothers and sisters who miss me like I miss them? And what would our lives have been like if they had kept me?
Life, right? And the most fundamental existential question that a child or an adult in that situation is, who am I? Once you look at it in that way, you can immediately understand the trauma that people can go through if they have no way of knowing actually where they came from.
One day at school, we were told to draw our family tree. There were so many gaps on mine that the other kids laughed and told me I don't really exist. I thought it would get easier as I grew older,
But it didn't. In some ways, my life is normal, but I still carry these questions with me everywhere I go. Others, like me, are not so lucky. Now that I have a family of my own, my children ask me questions I don't have answers to. I fear they might grow up with the same belonging-shaped hole I have had in my chest all my life. Sometimes, on the street, I look at people's faces as they pass me by. Could they be my parents, or brothers, or sisters, or others like me?
Identity is not just what you normally see on your passport. It's also about where you come from, who you really are, how you relate to your family. I mean, that's an important dimension which we also find in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 8, which really adds this additional issue of family relations. But then there is the psychosocial element and the implication of not having an identity. And that's something which doesn't flow from the law, but it's what you feel inside. We should try to assist governments to create policies which addresses these issues so that all this suffering can be avoided.
It has been a life of unanswered questions, but I feel happy and relieved that I was able to give my children the roots I never had.
The child's right to identity includes name, nationality, and family relations. Failure to protect legal identity may prevent children from accessing services and benefiting from safeguards. Governments have an obligation to speedily restore a child's identity whenever elements are missing. Knowing origins is a right.
So yeah, you can see that it's a bit a touchy subject, even though we don't deal with this that much. I know when during the draft period of the CRC, there was a really interesting and traumatic situation in Argentina, and they were actually the ones who facilitated that the identity protection shall be included in the CRC, because many children has been forcefully separated from their family and given to other groups to be raised up, and even after the conflict ended, they could not trace back their original families. There are many issues when identity protection is not so evident, and assisted reproduction is only one of them. Although it has an extra layer, because I remember an interview with one of the clients of this NGO that how they describe the feeling about having lost fragments of their identity. So imagine that you're having game night at home with your family and you're doing puzzles. And you are doing puzzles the way that each of you have a certain share of puzzle pieces, and the big puzzle is nearly ready, although you are the one who cannot provide the last piece because you were not even given that last piece. And this frustration and suffering, which actually just prolonging in your whole life, cannot be fulfilled without any help. So it very much implies that these issues has to be traced back, because it has significant element for the child's well-being. And finally, thank God, we are getting closer and closer to establishing non-anonymity, let's say. First of all, in adoption procedures, it is becoming more and more of a trend because of the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly has also provided a recommendation on how policies or governmental policies should be according to opening up the possibilities for children to access the medical history or certain identifiable or non-identifiable information about the donors, for example. And I would also draw your attention to the UK example, because in the UK, a child above a certain age can actually access interesting data from not only the adoptive parents, but also those from whom their genetic and biological gametes come from, if they come from an IVF. So, for example, things like name, not necessarily the whole name, but parts of the name, the last address they lived in, also the hair color, hobbies, medical history, and these things. So the children, even though it's not fully accessible to them, but to a certain type, they can actually know about their culture or about their language, why I look like this, why I look like that, because if there are good guidelines to the adoptive or the intended parents, this information can be spoken to children in a way that they will not feel weird or offended by it, based on the UK example. Although all the time when we talk about values, we have to put in the balancing activity. So I know about the Hungarian legislation in adoption, because we have to draw a parallel with adoption when we talk about the identity issues, that above the age of 14, the child has actually the possibility to trace back the original biological parents, although not in a very clear way, because prior consent of the biological parents are necessary for them to allow them to trace them back or even to meet them up. And why is that? Imagine that you were just a 17-year-old girl. Unfortunately, you got pregnant without any safety net, and you decided to put the child on adoption. Now you live in a happy family relationship, you have a husband, you have other children, but you never actually disclose this, let's say, more darker phase or area of your life to your husbands. And one time someone is knocking on the door that you are my biological parent. This can very much disrupt the already existing balanced and harmonious family life. So that's why I can understand that there has to be some safeguards for those biological parents who would not like to actually get in touch with their biological child and such. But even though when we talk about family issues and relations, we have to shift the focus to the child themselves. Even to disclose some kind of ideas or some kind of information that why I am not your biological child. Because even though this information from the adoptive parents, for example, can be lost, even though it is necessary to disclose them the fact of adoption, it is a problematic issue, so let's not say anything. But in adult life, they will feel the missing piece anyway. So they will go to the court, as they did many times. In one case, when it was about surrogacy and recognition of parenthood in France, when actually first time the Strasbourg court recognized that identity-related issues are parts of the right to life and family life issues. So this this has to be also focused from the child point of view. So if a child's identity rights are at stake because of the non-recognition of the legal parenthood, the whole case will shift towards supporting the child's parenthood recognition, even though surrogacy may be illegal in the home country. This is a followable pathway, let's say, but still very interesting in regards to how sovereignty and the state's own idea of why surrogacy shall be prohibited is anyway enforced, because the surrogacy essentially has been recognized on their territory, even though there is a prohibition. because of it was in the best interest of the child to be recognized, evidently. Although it's another issue, maybe later. Also, the identity issues were very much clear in the Miskolc and Croatia case, when actually the court recognized that it was about an adult applicant actually, but he referred to the inability to look into the records, adoption records and the medical records during early adulthood, that identity-related issues is very, very important to self-development. So it has been said by the court. So we can see that the dimensions, these holistic dimensions we were speaking about, not only the legal, are very much in the law, or at least in the court cases. That's what we would like to recognize in surrogacy cases as well, because it's not only about the paper, it's also about the reality and how the child actually feels, or the adult actually can feel confident and self-constructed identity in themselves later in adult life. And if we do not have safeguards and transparency in that, that can cause problems and cases, human rights cases also. So international organizations have dealt with the issue and they are opposing recommendations, although nothing is especially clear because all the states would like to stick to their own balancing act performed in these cases. So we have a really long way to go, I would say, as of now. To conclude, I would like you to bring with yourself at home that children's rights are human rights. Children are not only pawns of reproductive desires of adults, they are their own self, although it is our job as adults to facilitate the construction of their self, identity, and the feeling of safety and well-being. This is what I wanted to tell you. Maybe it was a bit thought-provoking rather than giving concrete legal solutions and ideas, but thank you for your attention.